Her words cut deeper than any knife. You're just a paycheck. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just walked out, leaving behind everything I thought was a marriage. My name's Daniel Hayes, 36 years old, and for the last decade, I've been grinding myself into dust as a project manager at a mid-sized firm. The hours aren't glamorous. Late nights, endless site meetings, deadlines that never stop moving. But I told myself it was worth it. Every overtime shift, every missed barbecue, every time I told Evan, my 10-year-old son, Dad, can't make it this time. I thought I was building something that mattered, a stable life, a future. Claire, my wife, loved to tell people she was finding herself. It sounded romantic when we were young. She bounced between classes, dabbling in hobbies, waiting for inspiration to strike, while I carried a mortgage, the utilities, the groceries, everything. People thought she was free-spirited, but behind closed doors that freedom had a price tag, and it was glued to my back. Still, I believed the trade-off was temporary. I figured she'd land on something, eventually, and maybe I'd finally get to breathe, but the truth was always there in the little things. The way she sneered when I came home tired. The way she'd roll her eyes when Evan showed me his drawings, like I wasn't really present enough to deserve the moment. She was good at acting sweet around friends, like I was the lucky one. The night it all snapped. We weren't even arguing about anything big. Dinner plate sat cold on the table. Evan already asleep upstairs. Claire had that look, glass of wine in hand, phone buzzing with messages I wasn't meant to see, the smirk that told me I was about to be lectured on my failures. You don't even talk to me anymore, she said, swirling her wine. I rubbed my eyes. Claire, I worked a 12-hour shift. Can we not do this tonight? That's when she set the glass down with a sharp clink. Her eyes narrowed. Do you even hear yourself? You think this is a marriage? You're never here. You don't care. To you, this family is just bills and schedules. Something inside me snapped. I'm the one paying those bills. Keeping the lights on, keeping Evan in school, keeping food on this table. What do you think this house runs on, Claire? Magic. And that's when she said it. No hesitation. No regret. Just pure, ice-cold contempt. You're just a paycheck. The silence felt like the world had stopped. Her eyes were flat, dead, like she was finally saying what she'd been thinking for years. In that moment, I realized it wasn't slip. This wasn't anger talking. This was the truth she lived by. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't even pack a bag. I grabbed my keys from the counter and walked straight out the door. I heard her call after me. Something sharp, something smug. But I didn't turn back. The air outside was cold, sharper than I expected. My hands trembled as I slid into the car, but my face was calm. Almost too calm. I turned the ignition and drove without knowing where I was going. Streetlights smeared across the windshield as I drifted through town. My chest felt hollow, but the longer I drove, the clearer it became. This wasn't sudden. That sentence, "You're just a paycheck," had been hiding in her tone for years. In every dismissive glance. Every time she laughed off my exhaustion. Every time she played the carefree wife, while I carried the weight. And I couldn't stop asking myself, if that's all I was to her, what did that make our marriage? What did that make me do to my own son? I drove until the gas light flickered on, until my phone buzzed with missed calls I didn't answer, until the numbness in my hands gave way to something hotter, a strange, steady fire. Not rage, not yet, just the quiet certainty that something had broken tonight, and nothing would ever go back to how it was. The next morning, I told myself it was just a cruel outburst, a line thrown in anger. I wanted to believe that, because the alternative meant admitting my marriage had been a fraud for years. So I got up, showered, put on my work clothes, and went through the motions. If I kept moving, maybe it would all fade. But when I came downstairs, Evan wouldn't look at me. He sat at the table with a bowl of cereal, shoulders hunched, eyes locked on the soggy flakes, as if I wasn't even there. Normally, he'd light up when I walked in, chatter about his dreams or the superhero movie he wanted to see. Not today. "Morning, champ," I said, forcing a smile. Nothing. Not even a grunt. "Claire, of course. stood by the sink, mug of coffee in hand, her expression polished into something serene. "He doesn't have much to say to you right now," she said smoothly. "He's a little upset after you walked out last night." The way she lingered on "walked out" made my stomach twist. I glanced at Evan. "Buddy, I didn't." Claire cut me off. "You don't need to explain yourself. He understands more than you think." She rested a hand on his shoulder like she was a benevolent parent, shielding him from my sins. Evan stiffened under her touch, but didn't push her hand away, and the silence between us told me everything. She'd already been talking, planting seeds. On the drive to work, my mind spun with half-formed denials I hadn't even voiced. She was rewriting the story before it had a chance to settle. And worst of all, she was doing it through Evan. I told myself I could survive the cold shoulder at home. I'd find a way to reach him. But the hit at work blindsided me. It was just after lunch when I got the email. "Please come to HR immediately." My gut clenched. I hadn't done anything wrong. Not here. Not ever. Still, I walked the hallway like a man headed for sentencing. The HR rep, a woman named Melissa I'd known for years, had that neutral expression plastered on her face. "Daniel, we received a call," she said, fingers steepled on the desk. "A serious one. About you." My voice cracked before I could steady it. "A call from who?" "They didn't give their name," she replied. "But the allegation is that you've been harassing your wife. Financially, emotionally, that you've been controlling her access to money and creating a hostile environment at home." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "That's not true." Melissa sighed. "I'm not saying it is. But you understand why we have to address it." The call was detailed, specific. She glanced at her notes. The caller said you threatened to cut off her credit card if she didn't behave. I barked out a laugh that sounded more like a choke. "Behave? Are you serious?" She lowered her eyes. "I need you to understand, Daniel. This kind of allegation can't just be ignored. We'll keep it confidential for now. But if anything else comes in, we'll have to escalate. Do you understand?" I walked out of HR's office like a ghost. Every step echoed louder than it should. By the time I reached my desk, it all connected. Claire. Of course, it was her. Who else knew enough about our finances, about our arguments, to craft a complaint like that? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling tiles. It wasn't just a fight. She was building a case, lying a trail of evidence, where she was the victim and I was the villain. And it didn't stop there. That week, neighbors I'd waved for years suddenly looked at me differently. Conversations went quiet when I walked by. A friend from the gym texted me. "Hey man, everything okay? Heard some stuff about you and Claire." Heard some stuff. That was all it took. 3 words to corrode a reputation. Claire wasn't just angry. She was controlling the narrative in every corner of my life, and I could feel it spreading like smoke through the walls. At dinner, Evan barely spoke. When I tried, he muttered, "Mom said you didn't want to be here anymore." His eyes didn't rise from his plate. I swallowed hard. "That's not true, Bud. Claire shot me a glance sharp enough to cut. "Let's not confuse him with adult problems." She said it with the tone of a teacher correcting a child. I wanted to slam my fist into the table, shout the truth until it shattered her facade. But the fear in Evan's eyes pinned me down. If I fought now, I'd be proving her right in his mind. So I chewed my food in silence, burning inside. That night, lying awake in the dark, it hit me. This wasn't about saving a marriage. It wasn't even about me. Claire had decided to win, no matter the cost. And if I didn't start playing smart, I wasn't just going to lose her. I was going to lose my son, my career, and maybe everything I'd built. It was more than a breakup. It was a campaign. A war. And I had just stepped onto the battlefield without realizing it. I could have gone nuclear right then, shouted at Claire, confronted the neighbors, demanded Evan tell me every word she'd poisoned him with. But instead, I did the one thing she didn't expect. At night, after Evan went to bed and Claire retreated to the spare room, she now occupied, like a queen in exile, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open. I logged into our joint accounts, scrolling through statements line by line. For years, I'd skimmed the balances, trusting that my income was covering the bills. Now, I examined every transfer like a detective studying a crime scene. That's when I saw it. 2 withdrawals. Small at first, a few $100s, but not to any bill I recognized. Not groceries, not utilities. The account number listed under the transfers was unfamiliar. By the 3rd time I saw it, my gut told me this wasn't random. I copied the details down, ran a quick search, and my stomach dropped when the name tied to the account came up. Melissa, Claire's sister. Melissa, the self-styled entrepreneur who had burned through 3 failed startups and always had a new pitch about breaking free from a 9-to-5 grind. Melissa, whom Claire swore was just crashing here and there while she got back on her feet. And now she had her hands on my paycheck. For a second, my pulse roared in my ears. The image of both of them laughing at my expense lit my vision red. But I forced myself to breathe. Proof, not anger. The next clue didn't come from a bank statement. It came from Evan. It was Saturday morning, just the 2 of us in the living room. He was fiddling with Legos, silent as usual, when he suddenly said, "Mom said Aunt Melissa's going to help with her new business." I froze. What business? He shrugged, clicking 2 pieces together. I don't know. Something about selling stuff online. They were talking about it last night. I wasn't supposed to hear. A sick realization spread through me. Claire wasn't just venting about our marriage. She was building something with her sister, a future funded by me. That night, when she went upstairs, I dug deeper. Receipts in the trash. A crumpled shipping invoice for bulk cosmetics, billed to a P.O. box under Melissa's name. An email left open on the shared tablet, advertising a startup workshop registration. 2 seats paid with our credit card. It all clicked. My money wasn't vanishing into thin air. It was fueling their little dream, while I played the oblivious workhorse. The final nail came through her carelessness. One evening, she left her phone face down on the counter when it buzzed. The preview lit up with Melissa's name. Transfer cleared. We're almost there. Almost where? I didn't need to ask. I sat down, shaking, staring at the glow of the phone. For years, I'd swallowed every jab, every cold shoulder, telling myself she was just lost, that one day she'd come back around. But the truth was uglier than I imagined. Claire didn't want to find herself. She wanted to replace me. I scrolled back through the transfers, the receipts, Evan's words echoing in my head. Aunt Melissa's going to help with her new business. They weren't planning for a family. They were planning for themselves. And I was nothing but the bankroll. The rage was there, boiling, ready to consume me. I could have stormed upstairs, shoved the proof in her face, demanded an explanation. But what would that get me? She'd deny, twist it, play the victim louder than before. No, not this time. I closed the laptop slowly, slid my notes into a folder, and sat in the quiet hum of the fridge. Anger wouldn't save me. Yelling wouldn't make Evan believe me. The only thing that would matter, in court, in custody, in the eyes of anyone who'd been fed her lies, was evidence. So I made myself a promise. I would not react. I would not explode. I would not give her the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. Instead, I would watch, collect, prepare. Because if Claire and Melissa thought they were clever enough to bleed me dry and walk away smiling, they hadn't seen what I was capable of when the only thing left to lose was my patience. Every night I came home felt like stepping into enemy territory. The same walls, the same furniture, the same photos on the mantel, but none of it belonged to me anymore. The air was thick, poisoned by half-truths and whispered accusations. I'd force a smile when Evan ran up, asked him about school, laugh at his stories. But once he was in bed, the mask slipped, and I was back to watching, cataloging, waiting. The hardest part wasn't Claire. It was Evan. One night, as I tucked him in, he looked up at me with those wide, searching eyes and asked, "Dad, why does Mom say you don't love us?" I froze. My throat closed up, every word I wanted to say jammed behind my teeth. I wanted to tell him everything. About the lies, the poison she was feeding him, the money she was stealing. But he was a kid. My kid. I couldn't drag him into her mess. So I swallowed it down and said softly, Don't listen to everything people say when they're upset. I love you more than anything. That'll never change. He nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt flickering behind his eyes. Claire had gotten to him, and until I had the proof to tear her story apart, I had to carry that weight in silence. I started copying everything. Bank statements, credit card bills, even the crumpled receipts I found in the trash. I bought an external drive and filled it with screenshots of her messages, archived emails, and every suspicious transfer I could trace. I wasn't building a scrapbook. I was building a case. At work, the pressure followed me. HR's eyes lingered longer, and the whispers in the break room seemed sharper. My performance started to slip, the late nights and stress eating at my focus. That's when Mark noticed. Mark had been my closest ally at the office. A guy who kept his head down, but always saw more than he let on. One night, as we left late, he caught me in the parking lot. "You look like hell, man. What's going on?" I wanted to brush it off, but exhaustion cracked my armor. I muttered something vague about family issues, and his eyes narrowed in quiet understanding. He didn't push, but the next week I noticed little things. Him stepping into meetings when I was running late, covering a deadline I almost blew. One night, as we packed up, he leaned close and said, "Tread carefully, Daniel. People are watching. One mistake, and they'll use it against you." I didn't ask how much he knew. I just nodded. Meanwhile, Claire grew bolder. She started talking about our future again. Only this time it wasn't about us. It was about money, loans, investments, and opportunities that required me to co-sign. "Daniel, we can't keep living like this. If you really care about Evan, you'll help me secure his future. It's just one signature," she pressed one night, waving a stack of papers like she was holding salvation in her hands. Her voice was honeyed, but I heard the venom underneath. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "A loan, huh? For what exactly?" She gave a vague smile. "Just some business stuff. Melissa and I are working on something promising. It'll pay off big. You'll see. We'll finally have the life we deserve. We, not you and me, not our family. Just her and Melissa." I stared at her, letting the silence stretch until she shifted uncomfortably. Then I smiled. "All right, if it's for Evan's future, of course, I'll help." She blinked, suspicious at how easily I agreed. But greed dulled suspicion. She relaxed, already seeing dollar signs. That was her mistake. I wasn't just nodding along. Every form she shoved in front of me, I scanned, copied, and logged. Every email about opportunities. I archived. Each signature I delayed, I did with purpose, giving myself time to track where her schemes led. On the surface, I was the same quiet husband she thought she'd broken. But underneath, I was setting the chessboard. I'd spent years being her paycheck. Now, I was going to make sure that when she finally reached the jackpot, she'd find the vault empty and the spotlight on her instead. All I had to do was wait for the right move. The pressure broke on a Thursday evening. I'd been waiting for this moment. Weeks of biting my tongue, smiling at Evan, letting Claire think she still held the leash. But the second she dropped those loan papers on the table, her mask of calm confidence started to slip. "Daniel, we can't delay this anymore," she said, pacing across the kitchen. Her tone was sharp, desperate beneath the polish. "If you care at all about Evan's future, you'll sign these tonight." I leaned back in my chair, twirling the pen between my fingers. On the surface, I looked hesitant, beaten down. But inside, every muscle in my body was humming. "All right," I said slowly, "if this is what you really think we need." Relief washed over her face like a tide. Her lips curved in that practiced smile I used to mistake for love. She slid the papers toward me, already imagining the victory. But when I put the pen down without signing, her expression twitched. "There's just one problem," I said. My voice was steady, calm, too calm. "The accounts are frozen. Every last one. You won't see another dime until the court decides who gets what." Her smile shattered. "What?" Her voice cracked. You froze the accounts? You're starving your family." I stood, slow and deliberate. "Starving? Claire, you drained us to feed a fantasy. Do you think I didn't notice the transfers? The account under Melissa's name? Every time you thought you were clever, I was right behind you, collecting proof. Her face went pale, then red with fury. You're insane. You're making things up because you can't handle the fact that I need more than some overworked, emotionally dead husband. The venom in her voice might have cut me weeks ago. Now, it just confirmed everything I'd already learned, before she could spin another lie. I pulled out the thick folder from my bag and laid it flat on the table. Bank statements, receipts, screenshots, the whole ugly trail. I already secured a lawyer, I said. This isn't a fight you're going to win. She snatched the folder, flipping to the pages in disbelief. Her hands shook as the evidence piled against her. Every page a nail in the coffin of her scheme. You set me up. Her words came out as a hiss. I shook my head. No, Claire, you set yourself up. I just stopped pretending not to see it. That's when Evan walked in. He'd been upstairs doing homework, or at least I thought he had. His eyes darted between us, wide and frightened. What's going on? Claire spun toward him instantly, switching faces like flipping a switch. Her voice softened, dripping with false hurt. Evan, your father's trying to take everything from us. He froze our money. He doesn't care if we lose the house. He doesn't care about us. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself not to shout. Evan, that's not true. But Claire cut me off, kneeling down to grip his shoulders. He's abandoning us, just like I told you. For a second, I thought she'd want him again. But then his eyes flicked back to the folder still spread across the table. His voice was quiet, uncertain. If Dad doesn't care, then why does he have all that? The question hung in the air like a blade. Claire froze, her hand tightening on his shoulder. That's just lies. He made those up. I stepped closer, keeping my voice level. They're not lies, Evan. They're proof. Your mom and Melissa have been taking money, hiding it, planning things they didn't want us to know about. Evan's face twisted in confusion, hurt radiating through every line. He pulled away from her grip. Is that true, Mom? Claire's mouth opened, then closed again. For once, she didn't have a ready script. The silence was damning. Her mask cracked. I didn't push further. Not yet. He was just a kid caught in the crossfire. But in that single moment, I saw something shift. The blind trust Claire had spent weeks building was no longer unshakable. Later that week, I took the next step. HR had been circling me like vultures since the anonymous complaint. I asked for a meeting and walked in with the same calm I'd worn at home. They expected a man on the defensive, but I came armed. I know why I was pulled in here, I said, placing a smaller version of my evidence folder on the table. Someone called you with accusations about me harassing my wife. That call came from Claire's phone. Here are the records. And here are her transfers, thousands of dollars disappearing into her sister's account. The HR rep's face went stiff, uncomfortable. Mr. Hayes, these are serious claims. They're facts, I interrupted, sliding the highlighted statements across. I've spent weeks documenting everything. I won't sit here and let lies jeopardize my job. This is what really happened. For a long moment, silence. Then, slowly, the walls began to crumble. The HR rep's tone shifted, less accusatory, more cautious. They promised to review the material, but I saw it in their eyes. The smear was broken. I walked out lighter than I had in weeks. One front cleared, one battle won. But at home, Claire's desperation grew louder, more erratic. She stormed through rooms, slammed doors, and hurled accusations at me in front of Evan. "You're trying to ruin me," she screamed one night, her voice raw. I kept calm, every word measured. "No, Claire, you did that yourself." Evan sat at the top of the stairs, peeking through the railing. He thought I didn't notice, but I caught the flicker of doubt, the way he studied her with new eyes. Claire saw it too, and it drove her wild. "Don't listen to him," she snapped at him, voice trembling. "He's lying to both of us." But her cracks were showing, and Evan wasn't blind anymore. Melissa tried to patch the dam, calling me with thinly veiled threats. "You're going to regret this, Daniel." Families don't survive these kind of wars. I let her words roll off. Funny, Melissa. Families don't survive theft either. Then I hung up. By the time my lawyer reviewed the file, he nearly whistled. This is airtight. Transfers, records, false allegations. She doesn't have a leg to stand on. Still, I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Betrayal doesn't end with a folder or a courtroom. It ends when the truth burns so bright that even the lies can't hide from it. And Claire was running out of shadows. The night before our first hearing, I stood in the hallway outside Evan's room. I heard him whispering to himself, trying to piece together the storm around him. Then he said words that nearly broke me. Mom said Dad left us, but Dad's still here. Why would she say that? My hand gripped the doorframe, the ache in my chest sharper than any betrayal. I want to go in to tell him everything, but I knew I had to wait just a little longer. The courtroom would strip the mask away once and for all. Claire thought she could reduce me to a paycheck, a walking wallet she could drain and discard. But tomorrow, in front of the judge, the evidence would speak louder than her lies. And when that mask finally shattered for good, Evan would see her for what she truly was. 2 weeks later, the courtroom felt colder than any winter morning. The kind of cold that didn't come from the air, but from knowing the life you built was about to be dissected under fluorescent lights and recorded transcripts. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my lawyer flipping through the binder of evidence we'd built. Every page was a wound, a scar from the months Claire had tried to paint me as the villain. Across from me, she looked polished, blazer-pressed, hair curled, face painted with the innocence of a woman wronged. But her eyes told a different story, sharp, darting, calculating. Evan sat in the back with my sister Laura, his small hands folded tightly in his lap. He looked older than 12 should look, like he'd aged years in the space of weeks. I forced myself not to turn back, not to let him see the tension in my jaw. Today wasn't about me. It was about him. Judge Ramirez entered, a woman in her 60s with no-nonsense gaze. The kind of judge who could smell lies before they even left your mouth. She adjusted her glasses, scanned the courtroom, and nodded for us to begin. My lawyer stood first. Your Honor, this is a case not just a marital breakdown, but a calculated deceit. My client has been accused, smeared, and drained, all while continuing to provide for his family. Today, we'll show you proof of who has really been abandoning responsibilities. The first exhibit, the bank statements. Page after page, highlighted transfers bled across the screens. Money was siphoned from our joint account into one under Melissa's name. Thousands disappearing in neat increments, each one Claire had hoped I wouldn't notice. Judge Ramirez leaned forward. Mrs. Hayes, do you dispute these transfers? Claire adjusted her blazer, forcing a small laugh. Your Honor, couples move money around all the time. Daniel's just paranoid. That was me setting aside money for emergencies. That's all. My lawyer tapped another page. Emergency business investments with her sister? Evan himself mentioned overhearing discussions about a new venture. These weren't savings, Your Honor. They were seed funds, stolen directly from Daniel's income. The judge's brow furrowed. Mrs. Hayes, you'll have a chance to respond fully, but right now, the paper trail is concerning. I kept my face calm, but inside my pulse thudded. Then came the HR records. The complaint that nearly destroyed my job traced back to Claire's phone number. Logs, timestamps, even call duration. Undeniable. Your Honor, my lawyer said, these weren't anonymous concerns. They were deliberate attempts to weaponize the workplace against my client, risking his livelihood to strengthen her position in this divorce. Claire shot to her feet. That's a lie. I never. Sit down, Mrs. Hayes. The judge ordered, voice sharp. Her face flushed crimson as she sank back into her seat. For the first time, her mask slipped, and I saw the raw desperation clawing beneath her composure. Then came the witness. Melissa. She walked in with forced bravado, heels clicking across the tile. But the second she was sworn in, sweat already shone on her forehead. My lawyer didn't waste time. Ms. Green, are you familiar with these bank transfers? Melissa swallowed. I manage some of Claire's finances, yes. And did she instruct you to hold these funds in your account? Her eyes darted to Claire, who stared back at her like a wolf daring her to lie. Melissa hesitated, then nodded. Yes. The courtroom rippled with whispers. Claire shot daggers at her sister, but Melissa looked down at her lap, refusing to meet her gaze. My lawyer pressed further. And did you discuss plans for a business venture with Claire using these funds? Melissa hesitated again. Her silence was all the confirmation the judge needed. Answer the question, Judge Ramirez ordered. Melissa's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. I didn't even feel triumph, just exhaustion. In the back row, Evan shifted closer to Laura, his eyes wide. He didn't need the legal jargon explained. He saw enough. He saw the truth crack through the lies his mother had fed him. Claire tried one last desperate move. She stood, voice trembling but loud. Your Honor, Daniel is twisting everything. He's manipulative, cold, and he abandoned us. Enough, the judge snapped. What I've heard today is consistent, documented, and damning. Mr. Hayes has shown proof of financial deceit, false complaints, and attempts to weaponize both his career and his child against him. This court rules in favor of Mr. Hayes. The words hit like a gavel before the gavel even fell. Custody of Evan will be awarded to Mr. Hayes. Assets will be split in accordance with his filings. Additionally, Mrs. Hayes will be held financially responsible for damages caused by the false workplace allegations. This ruling is final. Bang. The gavel struck, and the case was over. Claire's face twisted in defeat. The venom she once dripped so easily was replaced by a silent, impotent rage. She looked at me like she could still burn me alive with her glare, but her power was gone. The courtroom had stripped it bare. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel vindication. What I felt was relief, like stepping out of a burning building and gulping down clean air for the first time. Evan met my eyes as Laura guided him toward me. He looked uncertain, shaken, but no longer blind. For the first time in weeks, he didn't look at me with doubt. He looked at me with trust. I knelt down as he reached me. His voice was quiet. You didn't leave us. I shook my head. Never. Don't ever believe that again. His arms wrapped around me, tight, desperate. And in that moment, I knew the battle had been worth every sleepless night, every measured word, every piece of evidence gathered in silence. Claire muttered something under her breath, but I didn't listen. She was already behind us, part of a past we were leaving in that courtroom. Walking out the doors with Evan's hand in mine, the weight finally lifted. Not triumph, not revenge, just relief that my son would grow up free from her poison, that he would know love wasn't measured in paychecks or power, but in presence. The fight was over. And for once, the silence felt like peace. So what would you have done if your partner looked you in the eye and said you were nothing but a paycheck? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And hey, if you're into stories where masks get ripped off, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one.